Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Okay, welcome to Meet the Author. My name is Joe Nash, and today we're talking to Henry Stark for his return visit. He was here last time talking about his book, Heart Lessons. Today he's talking about his new book. It's called The Adventures of Jasmine Turmalina. So welcome back, Henry.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come here.
So before we talk about your new book, I just want to mention briefly, when you were here last time, your book, Heart Lessons.
Right.
I can't show it because it was checked out downstairs, but can you just tell us what happened since you were here last with that book? Is it, I think you said it was chosen for someone. Tell us about.
Well, I submitted Heart Lessons to the Chicago Writers Series, which is a rather prestigious group that puts its books in the Chicago Cultural Center. It's a beautiful building in downtown Chicago. And that's where it is now, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm hoping that people who come to the Chicago Cultural Center will look at the book, see it, and read it, and maybe get in touch with me and offer some advice, and maybe want to buy it even.
So this book is just what, all Chicago authors, more or less?
Yes.
All right. So what are you? You're
Yes.
right next to Saul Bellow there, maybe?
I think he's there too.
I know.
Saul Bellow's writing is different from mine, but that doesn't mean to say that it's bad.
But anyway, your new book,
Yes.
The Adventures of Jasmine Turmalina, it's sort of I'm not sure how to describe it, it's sort of a fantasy, fairy tale, a young adult book. Your other book was sort of more realistic. Why did you, why this time all these little fantastical elements, I guess you could say? Why this?
Well, I have two children, they're both boys, and I was always sorry I didn't have a little girl. And one of my boys had a granddaughter, and he brought her to the house a lot. And in fact, she lives here in Loudonville. And it was a real pleasure for me to talk to her and deal with her and try to figure out how her mind works.
Well, how old would your granddaughter be?
She just turned 10,
okay.
And when I met her, when I got into serious discussions with her about her philosophy of things and the like, I guess she was about 8, and I was really amazed at how headstrong she was, and she had lots of ideas about many things, and I thought, gee, it would be fun to write a book with her in mind, actually. Of course, I didn't use her name. I changed her name from, to Jasmine.
Well, the main character is probably, what, 9, 8 or 9?
Yes, she's 9 years old. When the book starts, she's 9 years old, and I guess she's about 9 years old and 10 days at the end of the book. So we're talking about 10 days in which a fantastic number of things happen to her.
And her doll.
And her doll, Sochi, and of course Sochi can be very obnoxious, as you know.
Yes.
And more than once she has lost her temper with Sochi and was tempted to just get rid of her. But on the other hand, she really loves Sochi, and Sochi loves her.
Well, the doll is a quite funny and interesting character. I mean, there's a point near the end where the doll starts writing her memoirs of this adventure they're on, which is
That's right.
It's kind of funny.
Yes, and of course the doll takes credit for
everything.
for everything, for getting them out of tough situations and the like. But Jasmine puts up with her, and
actually, the doll was a good character. Well, I would describe your book. I don't know what you think of this. You can tell me. It was sort of like A Wrinkle in Time meets Monty Python, almost. It was kind of. It has all this sort of Wrinkle in Time. They're with the 3 witches, but anyway, tell us. I don't know where should we start? Tell us, well, first off, do you have a lot of little satires in here and little puns and wordplay, but it takes place in,
I changed the name of...
It's called Lalaville.
Lalaville,
and there's a point in there, I'll just tell people, the zip code is 12211, so I mean you can...
which is Loudonville, right?
That's right.
Which is Loudonville, and she lives in a fairly typical house. which I modeled sort of after my house. He spends a lot of time there. And the description of the yard is very much like the yard that I have. And there's a tool shed, of course, which plays a major role in it. And she's been told by her parents to brush her teeth and to wash her hands before eating and all that kind of stuff. And especially she's been told by her parents that when she goes to sleep, she doesn't go out of the house anymore because there are all kinds of things. You know, you stay and you spend the night in your home. You don't go out at night. Well, she and Sochi hear some noises in the yard, and she decides she's going to investigate those noises. So 2 o'clock in the morning, she and Sochi go out. Sochi, of course, doesn't want to do this. She's scared to death. Sochi only takes credit when things turn out well. Well, mostly Sochi's a coward. And so they go out into the yard, and then all these fantastic adventures begin.
Well, before we talk about some of the adventures, let me just read the people the first sentence of the book is this is a warning to children. This book serves as a warning to those children who disobey their parents and venture into their backyards when everyone else is going to sleep. Well, obviously, Jasmine doesn't follow this advice. So I don't know, do you read this? Is this like a little ironic warning here? Or?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. They meet, they meet Waxface.
Okay.
He's the first character they meet. And he kidnaps dolls. And the way he does it, well, first of all, if you don't mind, can I say how Waxface was created?
Sure. This is the first sort of...
This is the first fantastic character.
Okay, Waxface. All right.
Waxface. What happened to Waxface was there had been this very large Thanksgiving dinner somewhere in the Bronx. Lots of candles were used as part of the decor, a huge number of different foods, and then it cleaned up afterwards. And they put all the garbage into a bag, a plastic bag, which they put out into the alley for the people, for the sanitation people pick up. Well, a terrible storm comes, and there's a lightning bolt that hits the bag and brings life to this mess, who ends up being Waxface. And of course, because of all the candle wax that they had used, he's primarily made of wax. And he makes a living by kidnapping dolls and selling them to various agencies. And Waxface is basically a good person. He's a person, I don't know if you want to call him, but he's got a kind heart, but it's just very hard for him to make a living. So that's what he does. And the way he kidnaps these dolls is to play a haunting tune, which drives the dolls crazy. Now, those dolls that are inside the houses bang on the windows, but they can't get out. But there are other dolls, when the windows are open, who manage somehow to get into the yard and are picked up by Waxface. And Jasmine encounters Waxface and reforms them, of course.
Well, most of the, I don't want to say villain, but most of the villains in here, they're not really that bad.
No, by far the worst villains, and they get reformed also, are the Craxies.
The Craxies, yes. And
Yes.
Jasmine ends up, well, tell us who they are, the Craxies.
Well, the Craxies they're really terrible, and children are frightened of them, and they're a major problem in Lallaville. And Chief Donahue has told them we had another Craxie incident, and please, parents, keep your kids at home. Don't let them out in the middle of the night. The Craxies have the heads of rabbits, and the rest of the body is that of frogs.
Well, there's pictures in the book.
There's a picture in the book.
There's drawings in here that are very nice.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And by the way, I would like, the lady who drew the pictures is a wonderful artist, and that's Florence Levan, and she got her degree in fine arts at the Cooper Union in New York back in the early 50s.
Okay, well, when we show the book on the cover, maybe we'll show some pictures too.
Yes, that's her work.
All right, so they have all these little adventures.
Right. Now, the Craxies, their favorite trick, and it's a nasty trick, is they put down bunches of glue, in various parts of the yard. And then when a kid goes out at night, the glue only becomes effective at night. When the kid goes out at night, he gets stuck to the glue, And then they come out with barrels of paint and brushes, and they paint the kids horrible colors and so on, make them a laughing stock. All the woodland animals come out, laugh at them, and after a few hours, the glue loses its effect, and the kid has to report back to his parents, who become very upset with him. I mean, we told you not to go out into the yard in the middle of the night, and that's what the Craxies do.
Well then, okay, so then I'll just tell people that we have these little adventures, but then we
Right.
get to where the most of the book takes place.
Right.
And it's called, and you're going to have to tell us how you came up with this idea. It's called the Better Behavior Academy for Non-Obedient Girls. So tell us about this before I mention its most famous graduates, but tell us about this school first. Or not, it's not a school, I guess, this place, this...
Well, there was a man by the name of George Souris who had 3 very disobedient daughters. And he wanted to train them to behave properly. So he looked around, and the only places he could find were dog training schools and animal training schools. And he didn't figure that he didn't want to put his daughters in one of those. So he gave them money for the building of a large, mysterious castle where a rather secretive group of people would be trained to train these girls and turn them into model citizens. And that was the origin of the Better Behavior Academy for Non-Obedient Girls. And of course, as you know, Jasmine ends up there.
They go through a tree. Or
That's right.
They go down a long passageway, and they end up at this. It's called the BB.
Which is short for Better Behavior School of Better Behavior Academy for Non-Obedient
That's right.
Girls.
And I'll just tell people its most famous graduates, its first graduates were Golda Meir, Margaret Thatcher, and Hillary Clinton. See, this is where A Wrinkle in Time meets Monty Python, I think. It's got all this, there's a lot of crazy stuff in here. So Jasmine gets here, and then she would tell, now you can continue with what happens there without...
Well, she's astounded as where she is, and as you know, the school is run by dwarfs, lady dwarfs. And because they're short, they have very short names, like Sister Doe, Sister Ray, Sister Fun, and they judge Jasmine to be almost incorrigible, and as a result, they assigned her to one of the most difficult groups, which is the collecting the silk from spiders.
Collecting the cobwebs.
The cobwebs, yes. And then the cobwebs are spun, and shoes are made for these sisters, these dwarfs, because they have very delicate feet. And so that's what Jasmine does. It's a very tough job. She goes to bed at about 8 o'clock in the evening after dinner. And by the way, the food is nutritious, but it's pretty ghastly.
I know. It was a tomato puree and
kidney beans and calf's foot jelly and potato sandwiches, 2 slices of bread with a boiled potato in between.
And then there's like 200 girls here. Is that what?
There are about 200 girls there, right, of various types. And there she meets the platonic love of her life, Cortina.
And that's okay. And there's girls from like all over the world too.
They're from all over the world. There's a French girl.
And there's a Russian girl.
And there's a Russian
Italian
girl, and that's right. There's a French girl, a Russian girl. There's an African American girl from Chicago, and they all tell how they got there. For example, a French girl, when they asked her, how did you end up here, she said, well, she was on one of the little boats in the Seine in Paris. And with a friend, and they were celebrating her father's birthday, and she got into a spitting contest with the other girl to see who could spit the furthest. And then wind came along and blew the spit back, and it landed on her father's brand new tie. And he said, "I've had enough of this badly behaved daughter of mine," and he sends it to Bibi. So that's how she got there.
Well, it does come to a point where it turns out most of the girls, they didn't really do anything. They didn't do stuff that was really that bad to get there. But
no.
And it turns out that the BB is not really a horrible place, but it's enough. It's enough.
That's right. It has the accoutrements of being a horrible place, but it isn't. And the women who run it, these dwarfs, really show tough love.
It is. Well, it ends up being tough love. You think
they never strike the girls. The worst that can happen if you really rebel, the only weapon that these sisters have is a tickle stick. And if you're touched by the tickle stick, then you go into uncontrollable laughter for about 5 minutes.
Well, this brings me to, I wanted to ask you, when the girls all tell their story about how they got there, this reminds me a little bit of your other book, which is a story about storytelling. And this book, too, has this similar element of sort of stories within stories. So I guess what I wanted to ask you was this concept of storytelling, just in general, seems, obviously you wrote a book, but the concept of storytelling is very important to you. It's
I guess you're right.
why, I mean, in other words, this book, they all had, a lot of the people in here tell a story, not like in Heart Lessons where they're very long, but just
Right.
tell us about this concept of why storytelling is important to you.
Well, first of all, that's what human beings do. They love telling stories, and I happen to love telling stories too, and I'm pretty good at it. And I know that when my granddaughter and her friends come over for dinner, I mean, the first thing they ask me, Grandpa, tell us a story. So I like telling stories, and I like to tell fantastic stories. And it gives me a chance. It gives me, by telling stories and not sticking to factual things, I can expand. There's no limit to what you can tell in a story. The horizons is tremendous. So I guess that's why I like telling stories.
Well, in this book, you have a great character, the spider, named
Ari Schnitt, which is arachnid, which is the technical name for spiders. So his name is Ari Schnitt.
Yes, and he's prone to quoting Shakespeare.
Yes.
But he ends up helping Jasmine. So tell us about how you came up with the Shakespeare quoting Ari Schnitt.
Well, I love Shakespeare.
Well, then I should tell people there's many references to Shakespeare in this.
Many,
Yeah.
many, right. Well, I love Shakespeare, and I love The Merchant of Venice, and I think that little speech that Shylock gives, in which he says, are we not like you? Don't we bleed when you...
Well, Ari makes a similar
Right. Well, Ari makes a similar speech to her. He says, if you step on us, don't we get crushed? If you remove our mandibles, don't we die of hunger? That kind of a speech. And she's really taken by this. And she's never heard of Shakespeare. And she's never heard of that. But she's very moved by it. And she becomes very friendly with Ari. And then Ari tells her, look, all of these spiders whose web you're removing, you've got to do this gently. I mean, these spiders are very sensitive creatures. For example, there's one spider who has a sleeping problem. And it would be wonderful if you'd get him some sleeping aid and so on. And so she listens to him, and she forms this whole relationship with these different spiders. But he is definitely her contact to the spider world.
Well, it ends up also at the end. He writes her a couple of letters, and then she doesn't open to the very end when she gets back.
Right. He writes her a touching letter,
Yes,
and he says, I would have kissed you goodbye, but the most I can do is give you little bites, because that's what we do with spiders. And I didn't want. So, and then of course there's a new adventure that begins after she leaves BB. She ends up in Magic Land.
Oh, that's right. Magic Land is the final sort of step
the final,
before she gets home, and this is
right.
where well, tell us about Magic Land now.
Well, there's that whole King Lear story.
Yes,
just
I'll tell people there's a unicorn named King Sneer.
I beg your pardon?
No.
It's a trihorn.
All right, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
So, all right, and then he's got the donkey, who obviously plays the fool to Lear.
That's right.
And he's always talking in rhyme.
He's
very
always talking
funny,
in rhymes,
very funny.
which are very funny. And by the way, I should mention that some of those rhymes, most of them are my own, but some of them were done by a retired mathematician by the name of Barry Bernstein.
Okay, and in the front here, yes, illustrations, Florence
And,
Levin, rhymes. Okay, so Barry helped you with the rhymes.
Yes,
Okay.
and, he's just a very clever man. Very, very clever man. He made me laugh with some of these rhymes. There's a rhyme about she has a dream at one point, and these two llamas come into her bedroom.
Oh, that's
and there's that wonderful rhyme there where almost worth reading, but.
I don't know if I can find it, but.
Do you mind if I just
Oh, no, go ahead.
read it briefly?
Sure.
So this is just before, this is at the very beginning of the book where Jasmine and Sochi are planning to, after fortifying themselves with some chocolate milk and some apple pie, I guess, they're going to investigate these strange noises in their yard. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. But just prior to that, her parents put Jasmine to sleep, and she falls into a deep sleep just prior to going out at 2 in the morning. And in the dream, she sees she sees two llamas in her room, and she talks with them, and she records her discussion with these llamas in her diary. And here's what she records. One night I woke while in my bed to face a pair of llamas. The one was white, the other red, and wearing my pajamas. I'd planned ahead, the red one said, to find some clothes for llamas, but tried instead with lots of dread to wear a dress of mama's. I looked the llama in the eye and said, you sound so silly. For beasts like you, whatever they try, go naked willy-nilly. They asked for something good to chew to soothe their injured pride. I thought a moment what to do, and then to them I replied, I'll feed you neither fat nor lean. I cannot cast you candies. It's time to stop this sorry scene. Go and climb the Andes. And I thought that was a wonderful, that's due to Barry.
Well, like I was saying, your book is filled with wordplay, puns, rhymes, all this stuff. It's really very enjoyable. But I wanted to ask you now about you sort of, I don't know how to say this. Your satire, you call Loudonville, it's called Lalaville. And then you sort of you do a satire on sort of modern life and
yes.
TV commercials and our consumer society and all this. In fact, near the end, for punishment, you send people off. They have to go live in Long Island or something. So, what do you? I guess where does all this come from? You think all the and of course, whenever you mention that something cost something, you always say plus shipping and handling, and all through the book. But
right.
What about this consumer society satire? That aspect of the book you could.
I was aiming more for the adults who might want to enjoy the book. I'm not sure that my granddaughter, well, she's pretty smart. She picked up on some of that. But, I really wrote the book at 2 levels. At one level, it's strictly for kid, an adventure story. And at the other level, there's this mild making fun of life in the suburbs. For example, there's this beautiful park in Loudonville that they put up. It took them years to put up, and then they put up these signs, and I have that here somewhere.
No skateboarding,
yes,
no spitting,
no excessive noise, no showing of excessive affection, no playing the radio, no spitting, all that kind of stuff. Which contrasts with Magic Land, where there's a similar kind of park, but you can do anything you want, and I find suburban, especially now, since I spend a good deal of my time in downtown Chicago, which could be further away in a sense from suburban living, but I think it's a mild criticism. There's nothing harsh there, and I also knock the insurance industry a little bit.
You have these 3 creatures. What are they called?
Tylops.
The Tylops.
Yes, and they're very stupid.
Yeah, they're kind of dumb, but then they try to pull an insurance
scheme on her, and of course it fails. They tell her, look, they say, have you ever heard of insurance? She says, no. And they said, that's just a wonderful thing. They say it's the best invention since hot bagels.
And Jasmine being 9, like, what is She doesn't know what insurance is.
No,
And, it's like,
and she
thinks
says,
it
what
sounds
do I
like a
do to
good
get
idea.
this insurance? And what good does it do? And they tell her, well, look at this marvelous doll of yours, you know. Just imagine how you would feel if you lost her. So for $1.25 a week, we guarantee that if you lose her, we'll replace the identical doll down to the last detail. And she says, gee, that's not bad. And $1.25 a week is exactly what my parents give me as discretionary income. And it's dark, and she's about to finalize this deal.
And then
When, that's right, when little Sochi, her doll, looks at the fine print.
and in the book,
Yes.
the print is small too.
It's very small, and it's terrible.
And if you read it, it's very funny.
Yeah, it says this is a miserable doll, not worth more than a quarter, and you know she's emotionally unstable, which decreases her value even more, and all of that. And then the doll convinces Jasmine not to get into this deal, and then, as you know, Jasmine turns the table on the tie-ups, drives them out, and sends them to Del Mar, but I forgot what I called. I changed the name.
Deltaville or something?
Deltaville.
No, you got the,
Del
you
Mar
got-
became Deltaville. Yes, right.
Well, I'll just tell people there's great little satires and puns and wordplay and little references. There's a reference to Waiting for Godot in here that's pretty funny.
Oh, that's
I mean,
right.
kids reading it probably wouldn't get it, but it's
No, but at the same time, it's frightening. These two unshaven men, and they chase her away. And
Vladimir and Estragon, that's right.
Yes.
But so I guess that we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to say it was a very enjoyable book to read. The Adventures of Jasmine Turmalina. It'll be in our library if you want to come in and check it out. It's Henry Stark. So anything else you wanted to add about
Well, if
this
they
book or-
want to buy it, it can be bought on Amazon.
it is on sale on Amazon. Okay, you can get it on Amazon.
And
along with your other book, Heart Lessons.
Heart Lessons. Well, Heart Lessons is a much more serious book for a somewhat older audience. But I loved writing this book. And,
Now, it seems like you had a lot of fun doing this. There's even a great little satire of Ingmar Bergman movies.
Oh yes.
Well, that's why I'm saying, it does remind me of A Wrinkle in Time meeting Monty Python. It's got a lot of this crazy stuff in here. And then the satire of the Bergman movie was very funny. But I think whether you're a kid or an adult, you probably have a good time reading this book. So now that you've been here twice, if you have anything else in the works, you're going to have to come back and visit us again. So thanks for coming again, Henry.
I would love to come again. I love talking with you, John. It's
All right.
it's very pleasurable to be here.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, that's it for Meet the Author this time. We'll see you next time.